Most people haven't read the entire Bible, and even those who have often come across sections that are confusing or hard to understand. These parts are usually skipped over during teachings because they're difficult to explain. Still, even though they may seem strange, they often hold deeper meanings. Today, we'll explore 10 of the most unusual Bible passages and what they might mean. Let's dive in. 1. Stones that speak for God. In the Bible, there are mysterious objects called the Urim and Thummim. These special stones were kept inside the high priest's sacred clothing, close to his heart. They were placed in a part of the priest's outfit called the breastplate of judgment, worn over the chest. Their main role was to help people understand God's will. The Bible describes several moments when these stones were used to get divine answers. In the book of Samuel, David was on the run from King Saul, who was trying to kill him. While hiding in the wilderness, David heard that the Philistines were attacking the city of Keilah and stealing food from its storehouses. Unsure of what to do, David wanted to take action, but also needed direction from God. So he called for Abiathar the priest, who brought the ephod. This was the garment that held the Urim and Thummim. When David found out that Saul was planning against him, he told Abiathar, "Bring the ephod here." David then asked God clear, direct questions using the stones. His first question was, "Should I go and fight the Philistines?" And God responded, "Yes, go and save Keilah." But David's men were afraid to face the Philistines, even with that answer. So David asked God again. Once more, God promised to help, so David and his men went to Keilah, fought off the Philistines, and saved the people there. That wasn't the end of it. When David learned that Saul was heading to Keilah to capture him, he turned again to the Urim and Thummim. David asked, "Is Saul really coming to Keilah?" And God answered, "Yes, he is." Then David asked, "Will the people of Keilah hand us over to Saul?" God's reply was, "Yes, they will." With this warning, David and his men escaped just in time, avoiding capture. Even Saul used this divine method during his hunt for David. But the result was unexpected. Saul had made a strict command during a battle with the Philistines. "Anyone who eats before evening, before I have defeated my enemies, will be cursed." Jonathan, Saul's son, didn't know about this command. While walking through the forest, he found some honey and, worn out from the fighting, he tasted it. This small act gave him new strength, but would later lead to a surprising revelation. Later, Saul tried once again to seek God's direction, using the Urim and Thummim. He wanted to know if he should keep chasing the Philistines through the night. But this time, God didn't respond at all. The silence worried Saul deeply. He believed it meant someone among them had sinned, blocking their connection to God. Determined to discover who was responsible, Saul turned to the Urim and Thummim to find the truth. He even declared that if his own son Jonathan was at fault, Jonathan would have to die. Using the sacred stones, Saul first separated himself and Jonathan from the rest of the people. Then the stones pointed directly to Jonathan. Saul said, "Cast lots between me and Jonathan," and the result clearly fell on his son. It came out that Jonathan had eaten honey earlier, unknowingly breaking the oath Saul had placed on the army. Even though it was unintentional, Saul felt he had no choice, both because of the vow and the divine result, and told Jonathan he had to die. "Yes, Jonathan, you must die," Saul declared. But the people couldn't accept this. They remembered Jonathan's courage and how he had helped bring a major victory to Israel. They stepped in to defend him, reminding Saul that Jonathan had acted with God's help to defeat their enemies. Because of their strong support, Jonathan was spared and his life was saved. This powerful moment shows how seriously vows and divine guidance were taken in those times, and how even unintentional acts were treated with great weight. 2. A donkey speaks to the prophet Balaam. The prophet Balaam was called by the king of Moab to place a curse on the Israelites who were camped nearby. As Balaam made his way there, riding his donkey with 2 servants by his side, something unusual happened. An angel of the Lord appeared in front of them, holding a sword. Balaam couldn't see the angel, but the donkey could. The first time the donkey noticed the angel, she turned off the road into a field. Balaam, not seeing the threat, hit her to get her back on the road. A little later, the angel stood in a narrow space between 2 vineyards, with walls on both sides. When the donkey saw him again, she squeezed close to one wall, hurting Balaam's foot. Angry, Balaam struck her a second time. Then the angel moved to an even tighter spot on the path, where there was no space to go around. The donkey saw him once more, and with no way forward, simply sat down. Balaam completely lost his temper and began beating the donkey even more harshly with his stick. At that moment, something incredible took place. God gave the donkey the ability to speak. She turned to Balaam and asked, "What have I done to you that you've hit me 3 times?" Without hesitation, Balaam, still furious, replied to the animal. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he finally saw the angel standing in front of him, sword in hand. At once, Balaam dropped to the ground in fear. The angel confronted Balaam for mistreating the donkey, explaining that the animal had actually protected him from danger. The angel warned him that the path he was following was wrong in God's eyes. 3. Mysterious words appear on a palace wall. In the grand palace of Babylon, King Belshazzar threw an extravagant banquet for 1,000 of his nobles, along with his wives and concubines. During the party, filled with drinking and celebration, Belshazzar did something deeply disrespectful. He ordered the sacred gold and silver cups, once taken from God's temple in Jerusalem by King Nebuchadnezzar, to be brought in. Using these holy objects, he and his guests drank and gave praise to idols made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. While the celebration was in full swing, something incredible happened. Out of nowhere, the fingers of a human hand appeared and began writing mysterious words on the wall near the lampstand where everyone could see. The writing said, "Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin." Belshazzar was horrified. His face lost all color, his legs trembled, and his knees knocked together in fear. In a panic, he called for all the kingdom's wise men, magicians, astrologers, and scholars, promising them riches if they could explain the writing. But no one could make sense of it. Then the Queen Mother stepped in. She remembered Daniel, a prophet known for his wisdom during Nebuchadnezzar's rule. Daniel was summoned. When he arrived, he refused any reward and explained the message. He interpreted the words as follows: Mene, God has counted the days of your rule and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been measured and did not meet the standard. Perez, your kingdom will be split and handed over to the Medes and Persians. That very night, exactly as Daniel had said, Belshazzar was killed. Darius the Mede took over the kingdom. This moment stands as a powerful warning about God's authority and the downfall of prideful leaders. 4. The strange rule about cooking a goat. There's an unusual command in the Old Testament that shows up 3 different times in the books of Exodus and Deuteronomy. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. This rule stands out because it's extremely specific, not just a general food law, but one that bans a very particular act: boiling a baby goat in the same milk that once fed it. Experts have offered different ideas to explain this. One suggestion is that the command was meant to stop the Israelites from copying certain pagan rituals. In some ancient cultures, this method of cooking may have been part of magical or fertility ceremonies, So, this rule might have been a way to clearly separate Israelite worship from those practices. Another possible explanation is more about ethics and emotion. Taking something meant to give life, a mother's milk, and using it to cook her own offspring might have been seen as especially heartless. It could have been meant to teach kindness and respect for the bond between a parent and child. Though the command might seem small or strange, it ended up having a huge influence. It became one of the key reasons why, in Jewish tradition, meat and dairy are never eaten together, a rule that is still followed in kosher diets today. 5. Moses catches a glimpse of God. In the book of Exodus, Moses, who had a uniquely close relationship with God and often spoke with him, made a daring request: "Let me see your glory." God answered with kindness, but also with caution. He agreed to reveal his presence to Moses, but not his face. God explained, "You cannot see my face because no one can see me and survive." To keep Moses safe, God placed him in a gap within a rock and covered him with his hand while he passed by. Once he had moved past, God removed his hand and allowed Moses to see his back, but not his face. This moment is one of the most powerful and mysterious in the entire Bible. It shows that although God invites people into a relationship with him, his full being is too great for humans to fully take in. Seeing God's back is often understood as a symbol. We can recognize where God has been, see the results of his presence, and witness his work, even if we can't see him completely. It's a deep reminder of both the wonder of God's closeness and the limits of human understanding. 6. Jesus writes in the dirt and breaks with tradition. In the Old Testament, serious sins often came with severe consequences to keep order in both society and faith. One of the harshest punishments was stoning, a public execution by throwing stones, for crimes like blasphemy, idol worship, practicing witchcraft, and committing adultery. For example, in the book of Numbers, a man caught gathering wood on the Sabbath was brought before Moses. After asking God what to do, the Lord instructed that the man be stoned by the entire community. This showed how deeply serious the law was under God's covenant. But in the New Testament, a powerful moment reveals a shift in how justice and mercy are understood. In the Gospel of John, religious leaders bring a woman caught committing adultery to Jesus. They remind him that Moses' law demands she be stoned and ask what he thinks should happen. Instead of giving an immediate answer, Jesus bends down and begins to write on the ground with his finger. When they continue to question him, he finally stands up and says something unforgettable. "Let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone." Then he returns to writing in the dirt. Gradually, the crowd begins to leave, starting with the older ones, until only Jesus and the woman are left. He looks at her and asks, "Where are they? Didn't anyone stay to accuse you?" She replies, "No one, sir." And Jesus says, "Then I don't accuse you either. Go and don't sin anymore." This moment marks a striking contrast to Old Testament justice. Jesus doesn't excuse her actions, but instead of condemning her, he offers compassion and a chance to change. It's a powerful example of grace, showing that redemption is possible even after failure. 7. Jesus curses a fig tree and it withers. In the Gospel of Mark, there's a surprising story where Jesus curses a fig tree. While walking from Bethany to Jerusalem with his disciples, Jesus becomes hungry. He spots a fig tree covered in leaves and walks over, hoping to find something to eat. But when he checks the branches, there's no fruit. Then he says, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." Mark adds an interesting note: it wasn't the season for figs. Still, the following day the disciples see that the tree has dried up completely, starting from the roots. In Matthew's version, the tree withers instantly after Jesus speaks. This event has confused many. Why would Jesus curse a tree for not having fruit when it wasn't even the right time of year for figs? Most scholars view this as a powerful symbol. In the Old Testament, the fig tree often stood for Israel, especially in terms of spiritual condition. A tree full of leaves but without fruit can represent people who appear faithful on the outside but lack true belief or moral substance. Jesus' words weren't just about a tree, they served as a message. This act was a visible warning about spiritual emptiness. It showed that looking good on the surface means nothing if there's no real connection with God. Just like the tree, a life that bears no spiritual fruit faces serious consequences. 8. The second death after hell. The Bible describes a final and terrifying consequence for those who continue to reject God, what it calls the second death. This is portrayed as eternal separation from God, shown through the image of a lake filled with fire and burning sulfur. This idea is most clearly described in the book of Revelation. After the final battle, often called Armageddon, the beast and the false prophet, leaders who tricked the world into worshipping false gods, are caught. Revelation explains, both of them were thrown alive into the fiery lake that burns with sulfur. Later in Revelation 20, after 1,000 years of peace while Satan is locked away, he is released once more. He again misleads the nations and sparks a final uprising, but God brings it to an end quickly. The text says, "The devil, who had tricked them, was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet had already been thrown. They will suffer day and night forever." After this, the great white throne judgment takes place. Everyone who has died is judged based on their actions, and the book of life is opened. Anyone not listed in the book is also thrown into the lake of fire. Even death and Hades are cast into it, showing that they too are fully destroyed. The passage ends with a powerful warning. This is what is meant by the second death. This second death isn't just about dying physically, it's about facing eternal judgment. The lake of fire stands for a complete and permanent separation from God, meant for the devil, his followers, and all who refuse the gift of salvation. 9. The mysterious being Melchizedek. Melchizedek is one of the most puzzling characters in the Bible. He appears out of nowhere in the book of Genesis, without any family background, without any mention of where he came from, and with no account of his death. He is introduced as both the king of Salem and a priest of the Most High God. After Abraham wins a battle to rescue his nephew Lot, Melchizedek comes to meet him. He brings bread and wine, gives Abraham a blessing, and receives 1/10 of the goods Abraham had taken in battle. Then, just as quickly, he disappears from the story. The mystery around him grows even more in the New Testament. The book of Hebrews says, "He had no father or mother, no family line, no beginning or end to his life. Like the Son of God, he continues as a priest forever." This has led many scholars to wonder who Melchizedek really was. Some think he might have been a pre-incarnate form of Christ. Others say he was an angel, and some believe he was simply a historical priest-king meant to foreshadow Jesus. What sets Melchizedek apart is that he was both a king and a priest. In Israel's history, those roles were always kept separate. Kings came from one tribe and priests from another. But Melchizedek held both titles, and this becomes a key idea in Hebrews to explain how Jesus could be an eternal priest. Jesus doesn't belong to the traditional line of priests. Instead, he is a priest like Melchizedek. So Melchizedek remains a deeply mysterious but important figure, one who stands outside the usual rules and whose priesthood looks forward to the eternal role of the Messiah. 10. The wheels covered in eyes. The book of Ezekiel begins with one of the most astonishing and mysterious visions found in the Bible. In chapters 1 and 10, the prophet shares a divine experience filled with vivid and otherworldly images. The vision starts with a powerful windstorm, a huge cloud, and a glowing fire that shines brightly in every direction. From inside this fiery cloud, 4 living beings appear, each with a human-like body, but with extraordinary features. Every creature has 4 faces: a human in front, a lion on the right, an ox on the left, and an eagle at the back. They each have 4 wings, 2 raised upward and 2 that cover their bodies. Their legs are straight, their feet are like those of a calf, and they shine like polished bronze. Under their wings are human hands, and they move in complete unity. They never turn as they move, always traveling straight ahead in line with their faces. Next to each of these beings is an incredible object, a wheel inside another wheel, looking like a complex multi-directional sphere. These wheels can move instantly in any direction. Even more amazing, the rims of the wheels are completely covered with eyes. Ezekiel describes this moment as what looked like the glory of the Lord. This vision has left readers and scholars wondering about its meaning for centuries. Many believe the eyes represent God's all-seeing knowledge, while the moving wheels suggest that he can be present and act anywhere. The 4 creatures are usually seen as cherubim, heavenly beings who serve close to God. Though the imagery is strange and difficult to grasp, it's meant to show something far greater than we can understand. The creatures, wheels, and fire all point to God's overwhelming power, his ability to be everywhere, and his glory that is beyond human reach. 11. The creatures Leviathan, Behemoth, and the Ram. The Bible features several striking and mysterious creatures that are often majestic, fearsome, or deeply symbolic. Leviathan, described in Job 41, is a giant sea beast covered in tough scales, with terrifying teeth and the ability to blow out smoke. God speaks of it as a creature no human can control, using it as a symbol of his unmatched power. In the Psalms, it says God plays with Leviathan in the sea, and in Isaiah, he is described as defeating this twisting serpent. Leviathan represents the chaos of the deep waters, both a real force and a symbol of disorder that only God can rule over. Behemoth is introduced in Job 40 just before Leviathan. It is a strong land animal that eats grass like cattle, has a tail as large as a cedar tree, and bones like metal bars. While some think it might be a hippopotamus or elephant, the details suggest something even more powerful. Behemoth stands for raw strength, stability, and the wild side of nature, something so mighty that only its maker can handle it. Another creature, the Ram, translated as unicorn in the King James Bible, is mentioned in Numbers, Job, and Psalms. It is a symbol of intense power and wildness. Most scholars today believe the Ram refers to the aurochs, a large and now extinct wild ox. Whether mythical or real, this creature paints a picture of overwhelming strength and untamed energy, further showing the vastness of God's creation. These creatures remind us not just of nature's wonder, but of the Creator's authority over everything, even the forces that seem wild or beyond control.